I'm Heather Conklin, and as Sunir said, I run product management for the Appexchange at Salesforce. So my teams build a number of different things. We build the Appexchange itself, so that's our marketplace. We build the front-end customer experience of the marketplace. There's also a very significant, what I call the back end of the Appexchange, where our partners actually go in order to list something on the Appexchange. We build partner tools, we build our partner community. We're really building all the technology that supports our partner business at Salesforce. And as I said, I'm a product manager, but that's actually not what I'm going to talk about today. Product management and creating a marketplace, even as Brian just said, there's lots of tools out there that help you to create a marketplace itself and the technology around a marketplace. But the thing I always say to people is that creating a marketplace is actually, the technology itself is relatively easy compared to creating the machine behind a marketplace and an ecosystem that is needed for it really to be successful. And obviously that's a lot of the people in this room working in the partnership space. So let's, I know I'm between you and lunch, and that's a tough place to be, so I wanted to start with something a little light and take you all back to 2006. So if you can think for a second about where you were in 2006, I use these to help remind you about what was going on at that time. So, Facebook was refusing to sell to Yahoo for $1 billion, which I think we all thought was a little crazy at that time. Turned out obviously to be a good bet for them. We launched the Wii. We also launched Twitter. So Jack Dorsey sent out his first tweet in 2006. That's what surfing the internet looked like in this Google bottom right. We had some big celebrity breakups, celebrity deaths, unfortunately, and Pluto was not a planet anymore. So a lot going on in 2006, and again, obviously a very, very long time ago. And one more reminder is that your cell phones probably looked like what was in the top right, or top left to you, in 2006. So why do I tell you all about 2006, and why am I trying to take you back? Because something else big happened in 2006. This guy on the left here, his name is Mark, and he ran a company that was much smaller at the time called Salesforce. And he went and talked to his mentor, Steve. And Steve, you probably recognize. So Steve told Mark, Mark came to him and was asking him a bit about how we were developing our platform at the time. And Steve's advice to Mark was to go and create an app store. He said, you need something that is concrete in order for people to really understand your platform and really to buy into it and expand and enhance Salesforce the way that the platform promises. And so Mark did just that. And we created the Appexchange. This is the Appexchange in 2006. It looks very different than it does today. I promise at the time it looked like a really cool website. So the Appexchange went live in 2006. And obviously we started with a very small number of partners, and this was it was the first enterprise marketplace for apps out there. And to further illustrate that, I did also want to just show you a bit of a timeline. So we were the first app store. We actually predated the Apple App Store. So again, obviously Steve helped Mark to create the Appexchange, and then in the subsequent 2 years between there, we actually gifted the trademark for the term App Store back to Steve and Apple so that they could create their App Store. So there's a fun tidbit there. But because we were so early at this game, there was no playbook. There was no one to follow. There wasn't a lot to look at and really try to figure out how to do this. And as you all are very aware, this is a difficult business, and it is really hard. And so we had to sort of make things up as we go. And 12 years later, I'm really excited to say that we've grown a lot over those 12 years. So I have this slide just to show a bit about the path of growth that we've seen. It wasn't like boom out of the gate. We had tons of partners and tons of interested customers. It took a long time to build. And I wanted to come here today and share our experiences so that if any of you are looking to do something similar, hopefully you can learn from some of our things that we did well and some things that we maybe didn't do as well. And hopefully you can make this path a little shorter for your companies. So over 11 years here, you can see it took us actually 5 years to reach our first 1 million installs on the Appexchange. And in the subsequent years since then, we are now over 5 million installs, and we're on track to hit 1 million installs a year, and that timeline is continuing to decrease. And one thing just to know about an install from the Appexchange is that when you install something from the Appexchange, it's not like installing something on your iPhone where it's a one-to-one, every install equals one user. Obviously, with enterprise software, one install is actually into an instance of Salesforce, and so it could be used by thousands of people at a company, for example. So that number, while on its own maybe doesn't look overly impressive for 12 years of being here, there's a much, much larger number of individuals behind that. And today, some just quick stats is we're really excited that almost 90% of our customers use Appexchange apps, and a lot of the Fortune 100 do as well. And today we are the #1 enterprise cloud marketplace, and really we have more than just apps. So we started as an app marketplace and we've expanded to all different types of inventory since then. And so we've kind of had to continually reinvent ecosystems over and over again throughout the years. So we launched a components store, we have consulting partners, and then we just launched a few new stores late last year as well. And since we launched the Appexchange 12 years ago, we've had tons and tons of companies coming to us all the time asking, how did you do it? How can I create a marketplace? How do I create an ecosystem around my company? And I've talked personally to all of these different companies that are on this slide about creating ecosystems. And it's interesting to look at some of these because they're not necessarily technology companies. And some are government agencies. John Deere makes tractors. So all kinds of different companies are really looking at this concept of how do I create an ecosystem in a marketplace around whatever it is that I build. And a lot of them, unfortunately, have this mentality. If you remember the movie Field of Dreams, sorry I'm taking you back a lot today, but Field of Dreams, Kevin Costner, he heard from the field, if you build it, they will come. And he built a ballpark and a bunch of dead baseball players showed up. So that's that movie. If you haven't seen it, it is actually a good movie. But a lot of people have this mentality. If I just build a marketplace, if I just put something out there, then partners will show up, customers will show up, and I will have an ecosystem. Unfortunately, it's just not that easy. And that's what I was saying before, is that building the actual ecosystem or the marketplace, the storefront, that's the easy part. It's not actually easy, but it is relatively easy compared to what you need in order to really build the bigger machine and the bigger business behind that ecosystem. And so what do I tell them? My advice comes from 3 different places, and I'll go through each of these in more detail. But first is early decisions that you make when you're first setting up are really critical. So people come to me all the time being like, I am going to create a marketplace. And I say, great, let me ask you a few quick questions. And typically, they don't know how to answer those questions yet. And so I say, okay, you need to go back and think about those things first, because really those early decisions that you're making about how you set this up are so critical to the long-term success. The middle one is that building inventory is very challenging. And if you're working on getting partners for your company, you probably know that very well. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what I just generally refer to as the chicken or the egg problem with inventory. And then scale is a recurring theme. So 12 years later, we're still talking about scaling. We have over 5,000 things on the Appexchange. We have over 5 million installs of those things. And yet still, we are focusing on how do we continue to scale and continue to grow. So it's not necessarily all that different from where you may be if you're just starting out today. It's just different types of scaling that you're looking to do. So early decisions are critical. A few different things to think about here. Is it going to be an open ecosystem? Are you going to be like Switzerland and let anybody come in and let them do their thing? Or are you going to try to really review and decide who is able to be in your marketplace? We have kind of gone a little ebbed and flowed on this over the years, but generally I would say that we have always embraced this idea of an open ecosystem. We know that our ecosystem helps our customers in ways that we're unable to address. Our ecosystem builds things our customers need, and they use those things to help grow their businesses. So it's all good. And we do embrace this open ecosystem because we know that with our partners, we are able to do far more than we could ever do by ourselves. How will revenue sharing work is an interesting piece that is so often unanswered at the beginning. Even when we started the Appexchange, we didn't actually start with this mentality that we would do revenue sharing with our partners. We launched, we went live, we were live for years before we introduced this concept of revenue sharing. And when we did introduce the concept of revenue sharing, as you can probably imagine, the people who had been with us for years and not revenue sharing took that a little tough. And now it's very commonplace, and you know, all ecosystems, Apple, whatever, you know, everybody has this concept of you're gonna share some of that revenue. But at the time, we were kind of, again, introducing something that was a little bit new. So it's good to just think about it up front. You don't have to start by, you know, collecting revenue sharing, but you should at least have some answer of what path you're on, because then you can provide that to your third-party partners up front and just kind of set that expectation from the beginning. Who is the customer going to purchase their application from? So Apple, you know, when you purchase things on your iPhone, you're actually purchasing that through Apple. So Apple collects the revenue and they remit the revenue back to the partners. In Salesforce's case, what we actually did is we flipped that, and we said, you're going to buy your application directly from the partner itself and not from Salesforce. So we're not in the middle of that transaction. And there are tons of pros and cons of doing it either way, but that is a decision that we have stuck by for 12 years. And you know, the pros and cons. One of the pros is that it does take us out of the middle. People aren't trying to go through Salesforce in order to get their support for their applications, for example, and things like that. Makes it a little less complicated from a legal standpoint or a revenue sharing standpoint. But obviously, it also has a lot of downsides as well. There's no perfect answer, but it's good to really think about up front, how are you going to be transacting with your customers? Is it through the partner, or are you doing it on their behalf? And then really building your team. Your team is going to be critically important. There's all kinds of different functions that are needed in order to run a marketplace. So things like, obviously, marketing, sales, partner support. We focus a lot on security with the Appexchange. So we do make sure that customers have some level of confidence in the fact that what they're getting from the Appexchange is not going to be detrimental to them. And so we focus on those kinds of things as well. But there is a big, as I keep calling it, a big machine behind the Appexchange that really makes it run today. And we obviously didn't start as a big machine. We started with just a couple of people in those functions. But it's good just to acknowledge that you do need to have you know, a very well-rounded team in order to run a successful marketplace. And you know, building momentum internally is an interesting thing as well. You know, we deal with channel conflict a lot, and it is hard because we do have that open ecosystem, and so some of our partners are selling products that are you know, competitive with the things that we're selling. And so you really have to think a lot about how do we motivate the broader company to you know, to carry our ecosystem message and understand the benefits of it, and really stay focused on that, even when things do maybe get a little tough sometimes. And finally, the technology that you need in order to support those partners. So there's tools that you're going to need for licensing. There's tools you may need for collecting revenue, just generally supporting partners. And you just need to think about not just focusing on, I need a website that lets me have a marketplace, but really what is the other technology that, you know, is less glamorous behind the scenes that makes that thing run. Okay, switching gears. So the chicken or the egg problem. Building inventory is really hard. You know, your partners are really going to want to see some customer demand in order to build solutions for your ecosystem. But unfortunately, customers need to see real applications in order to want those things and really understand the benefit that they would get from those partner applications. And so what I tell people here is a few different things here at the bottom. So first is just target some key partners. You know, for your company, you can probably think of partners who are complementary to what you do, who really help to tell the story of the ecosystem that you're trying to build. Focus there. Don't focus on too many, but pick a few that you can really work well with and really help them to develop an application or a solution that is complementary to what you do, because that will help. It's it's a very grounded story that people can really attach themselves to and understand what your ecosystem is going to be about. Build examples yourself. So at Salesforce, we have this program, it's called Salesforce Labs. And Salesforce Labs is actually a program that we run internally where we have our employees build things that we put on the Appexchange. And so they're free things that you can get on the Appexchange that really just help to illustrate what are the possibilities with the things that you can get on the Appexchange, and help customers get started in a way that is a little easier. It's free, as I said. It's from Salesforce, so it feels more trusted in that way. You don't have to go through onboarding of another third-party provider or anything like that. And so this program has been super helpful to us, not just in getting started with the Appexchange, but as I mentioned before, we've continually built new types of inventory over the years, and we always come back to Salesforce Labs. If we just need to really run a big push around a particular product and we're trying to get more partners to build, we run a big campaign internally to have our employees build applications, again, that help to show the way. And finally, building customer stories. This is something I sometimes forget to mention because at Salesforce we get very, we're very ingrained in doing this. But it's something that I notice a lot of the customers that I talk to don't often think about, is how do you tell people how a customer benefited from your ecosystem and the partnerships that you found through your marketplace. You really have to tell that story because to all of us in this room, those concepts may be very commonplace, and we're all working in SaaS, and so we understand a bit more about this. But when you try to go and sell to customers, they don't always get it. And so you really have to make it real for them, and customer stories, this is just general to Salesforce as well, but customer stories have always been the way that we have really found to make things real for people and really get them to attach and want to do it. And then finally, as I said before, scaling is a recurring theme. So I mentioned this, when you're first getting started, you're obviously, you're really just trying to figure out how to get started. It's not so much about how do I scale this thing long term when I have thousands of partners and things like that. But it's something to just think about, and it's okay to know that you may have to rethink about it several times over the years. I just created a laundry list of things there that you should think about when you're thinking about scale. We're always trying to get more, right? More partners, more solutions, more customers, more transactions, more revenue. Whatever the thing is, you're always trying to scale and trying to figure out how do you continue to grow. And what I've kind of found in our world is that it comes down to two big things for us, technology and enablement. So as I said, I build a lot of the technology for our partners, and we have something that we call a partner community. And this is a place where our partners can go and connect with each other. And they help to really facilitate a lot of the things that they would normally have to come to Salesforce for. But it lets them kind of come together and connect and do a lot of the things that you're all looking to do through this room of people. But lets them do that in an online way that helps them. And it really helps us to scale because we can't support every single person always, in a very human-to-human kind of way. And the community has been really helpful for us in that. And enablement. We have big teams of people that are really completely focused on enablement. There's both technology enablement, helping them to understand how do they connect with Salesforce and adopt our new products that are coming out. And we also have a lot of enablement around sales. So helping people to understand how do they successfully sell their application to our customers and how can they do it in a way that is aligned with what Salesforce is trying to do. And so enablement has been a big piece of how we scale. This is a huge thing that we're focused on right now. As I mentioned, we have over 5,000 applications and really just a ton of things going on the Appexchange, but we're looking at how do we continue to grow that and make it so that our partners can get to market faster and easier on the Appexchange. And so this is a huge focus of ours. So over, through all of that and through my own personal experiences, I wanted to have here, what have I really learned? So one is obviously just trying new things and failing fast. It's a common theme when you're talking about product management, but it definitely applies to creating an ecosystem as well. You don't have to have all the answers up front. I'm trying to give you some of the notes to help you prepare and get there. But you really don't have to know it all up front. We kind of have a running joke that we've reinvented our program so many times and continued to evolve it and see how it changes as our ecosystem of partners continues to grow and change. We're obviously trying to be ahead of that and move with them. And so you do have to try new things, and if they don't work, that's okay. Throw them away and fail fast. And that really leads into my second point here. I jokingly put this Appexchange logo here. At one point, we called the Appexchange 2. I would not recommend that to anyone. It didn't go great, but we did it. And speaking of failing fast and trying new things, we tried it. And we did try to reinvent and change the rules a bit over time. And a lot of our need to do that came from the fact that we didn't have someone like the Appexchange out there to point to and look at what works and what doesn't. So we have had to try to constantly evolve this over time ourselves. And then finally here, it's a tough business. I think, that's not news to anyone in this room. But things like this, things like SaaS Connect and the Cloud Software Association, I think are really amazing. It kind of gives a real voice to this community and a real voice to the industry that we're all in. And it's great to be able to connect with other people and share ideas about the things that do and don't work. And so, definitely take advantage of that. And I'll be here as well to answer questions and just really talk about anything I can with you to help you be successful. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that people have.
First, thank you. Yeah. That was amazing. So I'm sure a million people have questions about working with Salesforce, but I actually find it interesting because you're one of the biggest app stores around. Just understanding what life is like to be a big app store. You have all those success teams, enablement teams, scaling teams. What does the organization Appexchange look like, internally? I mean, you must be a large organization, small organization. What's going on?
Yeah. So in total across the company, we probably have, I would guess it's north of 300 people working on the Appexchange at this point. Wow. In some form or fashion. And so we have a large sales team, and the sales team is really focused on two things. Recruiting partners into the ecosystem and then doing the partner account management of those partners once they're in the ecosystem. So there's a big sales team. We have a large product and engineering team that I run that helps us to build all of these things. We have a very large group of people that are focused on marketing the Appexchange. And that's both like marketing to partners, marketing to customers, and making sure customers understand the value of the Appexchange. And then they also do a lot of marketing internally because, as I said, you really do need to get, the whole company needs to be aligned around this concept of an ecosystem and how do they sell that ecosystem to their customers. The Appexchange has been, it's one of our top competitive advantages, and our customers really value the things that they can get there. And we need to make sure that internally everyone at the company is enabled to provide that message to our customers. So outside of that, we have large operations, legal, all the things that you may expect, and as I mentioned, security as well.
And then even with a large organization, you probably don't have enough resources. No one has enough resources. Where do you feel like you're most under the gun, and where you need the most growth?
That is a good question. Yes, even with that many people, I don't ever feel like we have enough. I think that with where we are and what we're trying to do with scaling the Appexchange, as I mentioned, we're really focusing a lot on how do we build different technologies that help the partners to come into the ecosystem more easily and get onboarded faster and ultimately get to market faster. And for that, personally, I guess I'll say selfishly, I wish we had more engineers to help to build some of these things. If I could in any way take people who are not engineers and make them engineers from our group, I probably would. But there's never enough hands to actually build all of the different technologies that we're looking to have. So, just trying to figure out how do you look to other third-party solutions that you can potentially use instead of building things yourself. All those things that are pretty common that we're having to deal with. So I think engineering is a big one. Going back to what I had said before about how we sell with our partners, our customers buy things directly from the partners themselves. And so for that, there's a lot that we have to do around revenue collection that we either need to solve that with more people or more technology. And as I said, we have a little bit of a gap on how many engineers we have to build these things. So that's another area where I wish we had more people, is just trying to better run the revenue sharing aspects of that.
Fantastic. How many people here have an app on the Appexchange right now? Right, amazing. All right, so questions for Heather? One at the back. Two at the back.
Hi, Heather. Thanks for the time. My last company, we built an Appexchange app, and it was pretty difficult. Is the standard recommendation that you guys give to work with ISVs to do it, or are there other resources to make it easier for in-house developers who may not be familiar with Apex and Salesforce to build on your platform?
Yeah, sure. So you're asking about resources to help support you to build an app for the Appexchange? Yeah. So yeah, this illustrates one of our things that we're trying to constantly work on, is how do we help make people figure that out easier. We do have a group of organizations that we call them partner development organizations, and these companies they partner with all kinds of different companies who are looking to put things on the Appexchange, but maybe don't have the technology resources in-house to do so. So it's a type of consulting that is done, and you can look to any of these. Like a good example is a company called Epiphany, and they can help you to figure out how to build the app for the Appexchange, and also how to get it through things like the security review and things like that. So if you have some, maybe you don't have the people who can do the work, but you have some money to invest in it, then you could potentially work with one of those partner development organizations who can help. They've helped tons of apps get on the Appexchange, and that's a really great resource.
This one over here.
Great presentation, really, really helpful. I do have a question. You mentioned that Salesforce really embraces an open ecosystem, but do you still have a vetting process? And if so, what does that look like?
Yeah. We do have a vetting process. It's on a number of different fronts, and it really does depend a lot on what someone is building. So for example, if you're looking to build an application that extends our sales CRM functionality or service, we do a competitive review just to understand, what is it that you're working on and where's your roadmap headed. We do a technology review where we actually are trying to make sure that, you've architected your application in a way that is not going to be detrimental to your customer or detrimental to, what we're trying to do. So there's the technology, there's competitive, there's obviously a lot of legal review involved there. And then the last piece is that security review. So the only real gate that you have to getting on the Appexchange is that you do have to pass our security review in order to get there. You could go a completely self-service route of getting on the Appexchange and not really have to go through any of the more complex legal or competitive or technology reviews. And that is our kind of self-service path. But in any case, you would still have to go through the security review. So that's kind of the one main blocker there.
Awesome. And do you do any Q&A on the tech after the integration is built?
Yeah, we do re-reviews through the security review, and we give guidance on how we would architect an app, or what we would do to the user experience and things like that. But we don't do any sort of like a quality review in that we kind of make sure that your application runs in a very specific way. We leave that to you and leave it to your customer feedback to help guide you in the right direction.
Actually, Salesforce has always been a leader in app quality, app security, legal compliance. Things are obviously changing a lot this year. There's another conference down the road that they're talking a lot about that. I'm not going to speak which one. So, where do you guys see things? And you have a huge stable of apps that you don't control, but you have to somehow get them up to the level your customers need. How are you guys proceeding from this point on?
Yeah, again, I guess it comes back to scale. Sorry to keep repeating myself, but we're looking a lot at how do we make it easier for our partners to understand some of those different constraints or what the rules are right up front, so that when you're building your application, you understand what you're going to need to go through in order to get live on the Appexchange. Things like GDPR was mentioned earlier. Those are definitely changing the game, and we are making sure that our partners are thinking about all these things, they're well versed on them, and really keeping that focus on our shared end customer in order to deliver the best application. But I think a lot of what we're doing is through both enablement, again, and technology around making sure people understand the path up front, and then that there's enough tools and resources out there to help them get through that path as quickly and easily as they can.
Awesome.
Hi, Heather. I'm Dan right over here. I'm a product manager at Infusionsoft. Great presentation. Thank you. We're just recently getting into the space of building our own products and prototyping things and seeing what bites. So it was really interesting to hear your Salesforce Lab example. I'm curious to know about a time that you guys decided to build a product that you built in Salesforce Labs, and instead of partnering, you built yourself. What made that decision? Why did you guys decide to invest?
That's a good question. We have a few Labs apps that have actually become formal products for us, and I think that it just speaks to the creativity. When you obviously go out to a broader group of people, you're going to come up with things that maybe you wouldn't on your own, and so that has been a lot of the value that we've drawn from the Labs program. So, someone created different learning applications, which we've now blossomed out into what we call Trailhead, where there is a huge learning platform. There's all these things that kind of got started in a very grassroots way when we just opened it up to our employees to come up with what ideas were most interesting to them to build, and what use cases they could think of to extend and enhance our kind of core product set. And so, like I said, a few of them have definitely blossomed into core products for us. And then, we definitely just encourage as much innovation around those things as we possibly can. So. But yeah, does that answer your question? Okay, cool.
Hi, Allison. I have a question on the payment processing. Since you said that it's actually on partner paper, is that correct?
Yes.
So if a customer comes into Appexchange and they buy a product, then on the back end when they get the invoice, it's from the partner?
Yes.
Okay. So how complicated is that on the back end to build? Because that
it is complicated.
Yeah.
There's two different ways that our customers transact through the Appexchange. So we have a program that we call Appexchange Checkout. This is actually run through a partnership with Stripe, where we allow people to buy applications directly on the Appexchange with credit cards or bank accounts. And so in that case, Stripe does a beautiful job of handling all of that revenue sharing for us.
Okay.
They take the payment from the customer gets invoiced from the partner, and then Stripe remits whatever the share is to the partner to us, and to themselves for their piece of that. So that one, it actually is, if I was starting anew, I would try to figure out how to get as much of your business through that kind of a path as you possibly can. Because it's all tied into how things are licensed and everything is very clear. The other path, which is the majority of how our partners transact with us, they're actually, they're going through full sales cycles with their customers kind of off of the Appexchange. And then they're completing sales, and they are contractually obligated to share that sale and that revenue back with Salesforce. But it has a lot of flaws. And I think a big piece of that is it comes from not having the right technology set up at the very beginning in order to have to make it easier for partners. We didn't understand the growth that we would have and the size of the business that we would end up with. But initially, if you can think about, if you're going to go that path, I would just think a lot about how can you make it so that you make it easier for partners to do it that way, and make it so that the actual distribution of the technology is tied to the licensing, which is somehow tied to the revenue sharing. And if you're interested, I have lots of thoughts on this. So that is definitely a more difficult piece for us. Yeah. And we have the ability to do auditing and things like that, but that's really it's an audit function rather than just putting people on the path where you don't really have to think about it and it's very easy. So I think, again, it comes back to that technology that you really need.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Definitely more questions.
Hi, so my question is related to the previous question. So you said that the invoice is actually coming from the partner and not you. Yes. There are pros and cons of doing that, but can you talk a little bit about your thinking around, how do you think about the first time buy versus a recurring buy? Because a partner is involved in the first, you're involved in the first buy. that the customer does, but then subsequent purchases may go directly to the partner. So how do you work through that?
Yeah. So this is one of those enablement teams that I was talking about that we have. We call it partner success. And really this is all about trying to help our partners be thinking about the idea of retaining customers and reducing attrition of their customers. And the way we do that is, at Salesforce, we have that same recurring purchase going on, obviously, with our customers. And so the way we do this is we call it doing it the Salesforce way, but we try to help people think about what do you need to do around customer engagement and measuring attrition and monitoring, doing things like early warning systems to understand when a customer is more likely to attrit from you. So we really try to just enable our partners to do those things, but it's a difficult space because we are really not involved in that recurring revenue with them. They have to share whatever happens there, but the relationship is between the partner and the customer. And so we just try to solve that by doing our very best to enable our partners to be successful in that way. And then, by doing the attrition monitoring ourselves, when we start to see partners who have large attrition events, we do start to engage more with them to help them be more successful. Yeah, it's a good question.
Do you have a question over there?
Yeah, thank you. Quick question, more from the platform side. We have an app marketplace, and we tend to get pretty good traction with customers, but our churn is furious. And initially, we thought that if we improve the value of the apps, and some of the apps some are partner apps, we decrease our churn. But that doesn't seem to be like a one-to-one relationship. There seems to be this very fickle relationship with apps. There's a low barrier to install, low commitment. How are you guys addressing that and solving that?
It's interesting that you say that. I just had a conversation a few months ago with one of our partners who does sell exclusively through that checkout, the credit card method on the Appexchange. And she mentioned that exact thing, that they are finding that the customers that they get through checkout are more fickle and they turn a lot faster. I don't have a good answer on exactly how to mitigate that. What she had said to me was that she's trying to focus a lot more on how, when they do have someone come in that kind of easy self-service path to their application, what kinds of ways can they reach out and engage their customer and try to get them to be a little more sticky. But yeah, that is a tough problem to solve for sure.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Time for one more question. Otherwise, I definitely have many. All right, you've been around, the Appexchange has been around a long time. There have been a lot of attempts to work with you guys from the partner side. I'm sure you've seen some weird things, some amazing things. What are the worst things that partners do who constantly fail, like the repeating failure things that they do, and the best things that partners do to succeed?
That is a good question. I think that the partners that we see be most successful are certainly the ones that are very focused on the end customer and what does that person need and how do they really build their entire business around what the end customer is looking to do. We all love our own products and that is great, but making sure that you're stepping out of that and making sure that product really solves the problem for the end customer. That's certainly the most successful partners are extremely customer-focused companies. As far as what do people do repeatedly, I'm trying to think here. I think that I don't know if I have one specific thing, but one thing that we talk a lot about is with a lot of the apps that you get from the Appexchange, you're plugging them into Salesforce. And so how do you make it so that as an end user working in Salesforce and then working with your application, how do you make that bridge between the two things as easy as possible for the customers? You don't want it to be that I'm working in Salesforce and I understand how Salesforce works and now I have to just totally switch gears and I'm trying to figure out how this other application works and it looks different and it feels very different. That is hard and probably will reduce the amount that customer may end up using that application, or you make the barrier to using the application pretty high where you need a lot of training and things like that. And so what we've done to try to help our partners with that, we created a Salesforce design system that helps them to be able to adopt similar, look and feel to our products, so that again reduces that mental load on the customer as they're looking to use those applications. So I think just again it comes back to the customer, but focusing on what is that experience going to be like for the end customer when they move between your core product and your third-party partner products. I think that goes a long way.
All right. Awesome. This is amazing. Great insight inside Salesforce.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Big round of applause for that.